So big news yesterday as Tulsi Gabbard came out and officially and bigly, in a big way, endorsed Donald Trump. He's putting together a team of rivals of sorts since she's also like RFKJ. He used to be a Democrat and is now an independent. Watch.
This administration has us facing multiple wars on multiple fronts and regions around the world and closer to the brink of nuclear war than we ever have been before. This is one of the main reasons why I'm committed to doing all that I can to send President Trump back to the White House where he can once again serve us as our commander-in-chief. Because I am confident that his first task will be to do the work to walk us back from the brink of war. We cannot be prosperous unless we are at peace. And we can't live free as long as we have a government that is retaliating against its political opponents and undermining our civil liberties, weaponizing our very institutions against those they deem as a threat. We as Americans must stand together to reject this anti-freedom culture of political retaliation and abuse of power. I am proud to stand here before you today, whether you're a Democrat, a Republican, or an independent. If you love our country, as I do, if you cherish peace and freedom as we do, I invite you to join me in doing all that we can to save our country and elect President Donald J. Trump and send him back to the White House to do the tough work of saving our country and serving the people.
She's awesome. Stephen, not everybody thinks so, though. I'm going to skip for now the reaction from the left, and I'm going to bring you a bit of Noah Rothman over at National Review. I love National Review, and Noah's a good guy, but he's so off on this. He has a piece over there called "The Blame America First Crowd Migrates to the GOP." First, he says Trump's Democratic opponents don't seem especially upset by RFKJ and Tulsi Gabbard endorsing Trump. I beg to differ. Look at the pile-on by the Kennedys themselves against their own brother in the wake of his endorsement. And then he goes on to suggest that the reason Tulsi Gabbard and RFKJ were politically homeless well before this is because they got the boot. They didn't leave the Democrats left them, and for good reason. And he says, embracing the paranoia that these 1-2 Democrats court and agitated unease that leads them both to conclude that America and Americans are the problem is not a risk-free proposition for Trump, and goes on from there, suggesting this has somehow risk to the Trump campaign. The theory is basically they're nutcases, and why would he sidle up to them? What do you make of it?
I think it's interesting that right now you have Robert F. Kennedy and Tulsi Gabbard, two Democrats, basically aligning with Trump. And then the very same day, you had 200 former McCain, Romney, Bush officials come out and endorse Kamala Harris. So I don't know what's going on, if I'm going to be completely honest. And that's the other part of Noah's piece. And I like Noah, same as you, and I respect him. I just think that this is a struggle of trying to reimagine where the old politics are, and they're dead. And whether or not, again, you agree with the direction or not is completely beside the point. That style of conservatism or republicanism isn't coming back. And I would argue that this is a different version of that. This is conservatism on offense. And that's always kind of what Trump has always been. And so when you have the former party of Bush, McCain, Romney, et cetera, all aligning with Kamala Harris, that sends it to me a bigger message than Tulsi Gabbard and RFK. And for all intents and purposes, I do think RFK is kind of a kook. Every story they release about him, though, with animals only makes him cooler. You know, he dumped a bear in Central Park. He's a falconer. He's handled snakes with his bare hands. And now there's the story that he wanted to cut off a dead whale's head with a chainsaw. I mean, that sounds pretty fun, if I'm going to be honest. Yeah, it's dead. It's, whatever. You cut off its head, stuff it with dynamite, and stand back. I mean, who wouldn't want to be a part of that? And so I think that this is just kind of a new alignment of a conservative populism. And I know that those two ideas are at odds, but that's just where we are. This is largely a failure of institutional politics. And so you have a very jaded GOP and a very jaded GOP base who sees like their old party all aligning with Kamala Harris. which I don't expect conservatives, Republicans to go and vote for Donald Trump. I'm not a Trump voter myself, but don't align yourself and say you're going to support Kamala Harris while still calling yourself a Republican or a conservative. You're not. And it's okay to admit that. Just don't admit what you are under the pretense of saying, well, I'm a conservative, so I can get on CNN and MSNBC and bash my fellow conservatives. And nobody has time or tolerance for that. And so I look at this and I say, if Tulsi Gabbard wants to endorse Trump, let's hear what she has to say. If RFK Jr. wants to endorse Trump, let's sort of hear what he has to say. And those are decisions going to be made. And so I do find it interesting that we heard from people like Jim Acosta, this vaunted Camelot Kennedy legacy, and said he's tarnished this family's legacy. These people lobotomized one of their own family members, and one of their guys killed Rosemary. A woman in a car and drowned her. And so, not to mention that JFK had Marilyn Monroe. Yeah, not to mention that JFK had Marilyn Monroe killed allegedly. And so you have this entire sordid history of the Kennedy family. You don't even have to go that
far. JFK was banging 15, 16-year-old staffers in the White House. I mean, okay, this is not.
So this idea of this Kennedy legacy, and we can drown a woman in the backseat of a car, but if you endorse Donald Trump, how dare you, sir, is laughable to people like me. So again, I'm not a Kennedy guy. I think Gabbard has some interesting positions, and again, if she's going to do this, let's hear what she has to say. There is
the thing about Noah is, Stu, he's very much a neocon. Here. He's a neocon. I mean, and that's fine. That's how he feels, and he's much more aggressive when it comes to U.S. intervention than I think today's Republican Party is. But Tulsi Gabbard would be the opposite of that, right? She definitely doesn't see eye to eye with him on things like Ukraine, and so he attacks her. But I think he's off base here, because I do think that there is a growing strain of voters that's had it with the military aggressiveness of the past 20 years, and that's had it with our elites lying to us about the medical industrial complex. And by the way, I agree that RFKJ is, I'll use the term eccentric, no question, eccentric, and has had some weird skeletons in his closet. But his position on things like vaccines is worth pressing, because I'll tell you, show me who else has done a 4-hour interview with RFKJ, at least half of which was devoted to vaccines. We called his detractors and got them on the record to us saying, what would you like to ask him? Where did he go wrong? What is wrong with this statement in his book? Give us the ammo. And then we let him have it both barrels when he came on. And he stood and he answered the questions. And I'm telling you, he convinced me on a lot of the things. Not all, but he is not the kook on the vaccine issue that everyone makes him out to be, that is used to smear him over and over by people, not you, Stephen, I don't know what you've done, but who haven't done their homework. Do your homework, and then go back and tell me how kooky he is on that subject.
One point real fast, and I'll let Stu jump in. RFK Jr. has been doing the vaccine thing for years, and he's married to a Hollywood progressive, Cheryl Hines. There is a strain, and I always found this interesting, and where you fall on the COVID vaccine or whatever, I don't really care. But they were, the media was content to let kind of Trump's MAGA base, who said, I'm not taking the vaccine, and kind of put a microphone in their face. There is a strain of anti-vaccinism running through Hollywood that is notorious, and it's happened for 20 years, from Jim Carrey to everyone. And RFK was kind of a face of that. He was a guy who would go on The Daily Show, and he would be a guy who was invited on MSNBC and, Dylan Ratigan's old show, and some of the, Keith Olbermann was running the roost over there. And so this idea that it's so far out beyond that's a far right issue. No, there is it's one of these worst kept secret things about anti-vaxxism in Hollywood. And they were content to kind of let, the media focus on Trump's base on part of that. And so he's kind of, the thing with RFK is he opens a lot of, like you said, skeletons into that world, into Hollywood, into the kind of the far left environmentalism.
And he himself he's not a perfect man, not a perfect man. And look, if for Republican voters, he's not a Republican, and he's not going to vote the way Republican voters want him to vote if they put him in office as commander-in-chief on a lot of issues. But that's not how Trump is talking about using him, Stu. So your thoughts on the debate that we just had?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think you can look at this and there's tons of stuff. I mean, RFK Jr. has far left policies on stuff like global warming that, like, I find to be absolutely terrible. But, we're in a very tight campaign here right now. And before, when Biden was in the race, if you looked at the polls, and I did a big analysis of this on the show one day, going through all the polls, and it was a slight advantage for Donald Trump when it came to the RFK voters. They were taking a few more voters from Joe Biden. Once Harris entered the race, that changed in a big way. The people who were on the fence, that were normally left-wing voters, that were normally vote Biden, but couldn't deal with him being, incoherent and falling upstairs over and over again. Those people that were repulsed by that, they decided to find a home with RFK. When Harris came in, for a lot of those people, that whatever issues they had there were cured. And a lot of those people went back to Harris. Now what we see in polls post, when Harris is actually in the race, you see a much larger effect negatively toward Trump. And so when you look at this poll, if you go back to mid-June, Donald Trump was around 44.6% of the vote. And right now he's at about 44.2. His support has really not changed over that period at all. What has happened is there's been a rise from Kamala Harris, some of that with the positive media attention, obviously, and the comparative differences between him and Biden, but also some of those people from RFK coming over. So to act, and I think the media is trying to do this, and they're trying to say, oh, it's no big deal. He's not a factor. He was down at 4%. Well, what I saw was about 1.2 points moving toward Donald Trump. You're in a situation where the entire range of outcomes in this election is probably Trump +4 to Trump -4. That's how close this is. Taking a point and moving that toward Donald Trump in this situation is massively important. It is a big factor. And whether you think, he's right or wrong on the issues, or you don't like what Tulsi Gabbard says about this or that, these are important things in a political situation. And at the end of the day, Donald Trump has all the power that if RFK does something crazy or Tulsi does something he doesn't like, he can always fire them if they become part of the administration. If I'm Donald Trump, I'm very happy about this.
You know how much our family loves our dogs, right? Even Strudwick, sweet, troublesome, but adorable Strudwick. We love him. I can't even imagine life without them. They have a great life. They're lucky. But some dogs don't and aren't. That's why I'm so glad to tell you about Delta Rescue, the largest no-kill, care-for-life animal sanctuary in the world. They have rescued thousands of dogs, plus cats and horses too. They provide all of the animals with shelter and safety, and most of all, love. And they've been doing it now for more than 45 years. Delta Rescue relies solely on contributions to stay open, and giving can bring tax benefits to you too. Speak with your estate planner about how you can grow your estate while helping animals in need. And check out the estate planning tab on their website to learn more. We love our Thunder and Strudwick, but we love these other animals too. We just can't house and care for them all. But maybe all of us can help them find love and shelter at Delta Rescue. Go to deltarescue.org today to learn more. That's deltarescue.org. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.